Hi, Dad. I've greeted you before. I've greeted the listeners, which is not something that we usually do. But hi, everyone. This is obviously part two of our Father's Day special on Agla Station Adulthood. You must have heard Dr. Vipul Roy Rathod and Tash last week, and I hope you guys enjoyed that because we're here with part two. And we're both very, very close to our fathers. So this should be a fun and loving conversation. Me saying fun and loving right now is to also tell my dad that this is to be a fun and loving conversation. But yes, let me introduce you to the rest of our listeners. Dad, welcome to the show. Welcome to our Agla Station Adulthood. And everyone else, this is my dad, Siddharth Amin.
Thank you very much, Ayushi. Pleasure to be on your show. And I'm looking forward to what you have to say and what I need to tell you and your listeners.
It's funny because you and I've said this before on the show, and a lot of listeners know I obviously work for you, but I've been very clear to say that, I work for the company. I don't necessarily work directly for you. And so our relationship is not only personal, but it's also professional. And we land up spending a lot of time together, even though it might not be at work all the time, but a lot of times we commute to and from office together. So we get a lot of downtime. And a lot of the conversations we have, maybe the disagreements, when you tell me stories, and history and information, and it has crossed my mind. So to give people a background, you were very supportive of something that you want to do, and as long as you're balancing your work and making sure it's going on, you weren't you never discouraged it. And even though I told you that it's going to be public, I'm going to have to say things and give my opinion on a platform where other people can hear and the public would know my opinion on things and where I stand. I remember you saying, yeah, but it's your opinion, so you're allowed to have it. And you never made me feel like, oh, because I work for a corporate establishment, I should not voice my opinion, or that my job should come before a personal agenda that I may have, or a creative pursuit that I might want to have. And uh, I really appreciate that about you.
Thank you.
Having gotten that out of the way, your and my relationship has changed over the last 3 years, because ever since I started working for you, there's been a new added layer. I think on the episode with Mom, she made it very clear that out of the out of the two of you, you were the one who has spoiled me the most. And growing up, we had a very, I mean, not had, we still do, but you were definitely the parent that I went to ask for something, as opposed to the parent that would say no. And of course, I'm very grateful. But now that we work together, do you sometimes feel like our dynamic has, not sometimes feel, I'm sure you do feel it, our dynamic has evolved, right? From just a father and a daughter to people who work and live together.
So let me start a bit from the beginning in brief that uh, fathers always love their daughters and they will probably go all the way to spoil them. Uh, it's a different kind of a bond, and that bond has a universal nature to it. I would not say that therefore there is a differentiation with a son, but yes, there's a different kind of closeness. The second thing is that, as you know, I have been born after 5 girls myself. So
Yeah.
I have seen my father spoil his 5 girls. to a different level. And for him, his whole world was his 5 girls. And we have seen that many a times that there was prejudice in the way he tackled us, the way he.
Because you have a younger brother as well.
Yeah, and then there was a brother there. And then we were the mischievous guys at home. We were spoiled, no doubt about it. But we were very clear about it that dad had his preferences with the girls over the boys.
Right.
Uh, Insofar as your career is concerned and the company is concerned, let me also start by saying that you were working with a company, multinational, after you came back from your graduation. And I've always had this need that the family should follow in their business and the next gen must come on board. But the family had an opinion that you must get some experience outside, and then you did it. And I never stopped you from doing that. I said it's good. Built a discipline in you. I got you on your way to the office at 8:45. You were reporting at 9:05, probably 5 to 9 on some days. And
which doesn't happen anymore.
So that's the difference is. I mean, allow me to come to that a little gradually. But the thing is that got you some kind of discipline to understand hierarchy in a company, to understand who your boss is, how you relate to somebody senior in your company, how you relate to senior colleagues, how you relate to people who work more years in the company than you have. So you join as an intern, you prove your worth. Management looks at you, understands you better, and it takes time. And when you look at HR in a say, it takes nearly between 12 to 18 months before an employee can value his employer and before an employer can value his employee. You spend that time, and then a time came for you where you realized that the company you're working with, very flat structured, not many options of growing. They offered you some international positions in some overseas countries, countries abroad. At the end of it, what happened? I just said, listen, we have our business here. Why don't you join us and come on board? And I made very clear at that time that I will not be your boss. You'll be reporting to the CEO. And you'll have to rise up the ranks. In the 3 years that you have spent with the company, 3 is it or 4 now?
Three. It'll be 3. It's 3.5 now. Yeah.
3.5. You've grown. I'm seeing a much more matured person than the one that came back from university and the one that took that job with the MNC. Your maturity has helped you evolve in understanding people. And the most important aspect of life is to understand people, to hear them, to respect their opinions, whatever they may be. And I'm seeing that that is coming around with you. Of course, at times I have to also intervene and tell you to calm down when your emotions run amok on certain sensitive issues, but then that is required. And one of the skills that you will need to develop, and I think many listeners here on this chat will have to develop, is it's always good to be a better listener than a better speaker. Because what you speak is already in your mind, so that's known to you. But when you listen, you're listening to something that you don't know. And that is what you need to absorb. And in the last meeting that we had in the office itself,
I know,
where you were very upset with me when I cut you off a couple of times, and I told you, allow the person to finish speaking. Allow them to say what they have to, even if it is frustrating, even if it is boring. You never know. There could be something that comes up which becomes very important for you, and it did. So, and so far as our relationship goes, yes, it's been an interesting journey working together. And it's nice to have the squall once in a while. And the other thing is, I love telling you the stories of my life's experiences, as well as what I read. So I also give you that knowledge to help you around with your career as it grows.
And just to give the listeners context, we actually had a meeting where on a project that I do actually get to work with you and my kaka, which is genuinely, though, I enjoy those opportunities a lot when you allow me to be a part of larger decisions and the bigger picture issues that come up at work. And we had a meeting on this last week. It was last week. And I was supposed to be running the meeting, but obviously, maybe I was getting ahead of myself and I just wanted to say my piece so we could be done with it. And dad was being very patient with the people on the other end and insisted that we hear them out, no matter how long it took, no matter how irrelevant some parts of it might have seemed. And I could feel my anger. Just, in fact, this is to even let you know, dad, even though we had an argument, I could feel my anger just constantly bubbling up to be like, this is so frustrating because this is not what we need to be doing. This is absolutely not the right way. And this is just, we're talking about too many things. We're trying to swim the whole ocean when we need to be focused on one thing. And at the end of the meeting, like you said, I did get the message across. What had to be communicated was communicated. And like you said, I was able to have the last word, which in this situation was very important that I had that last word. But yes, when we got up, my immediate reaction in that moment was straight up, I was so angry. And I am not used to being angry at you as a human person, like not from work perspective, but just in the 20, now it would be about 25, 26 years that we have interacted before we started working together. I'm not used to being angry with you. And it's not something that comes to me naturally. And it's not something that it's a feeling that I like to hold on to, or, or bitch about it, or like give it more energy. So when I'm angry at you, my immediate reaction is upset and I'm on the verge of tears, and all I'm trying to do is hold them back because I refuse to cry at work or cry in front of you, who is my senior, and there are other people in the meeting. And yeah, you told me off after that, and after I'd had some time to calm down, I immediately called mom. I stepped
Oh, you did? I
outside.
didn't know that.
I thought I should tell you. I called mom and I was like, dad's just yelled at me. And she was like, well, what did you do? And I was like, that's not the point. He doesn't listen. He doesn't let me say anything. And as I was listing the things that I was irritated at you, I realized this is exactly the thing that he was telling me to give my colleague a chance about. And that's when, and you can ask mom, I was like, I mean, I guess he's not wrong, but that's not the way you speak. And I had to walk myself down from it, which is why when we went home that day together, it was a coincidence, in fact, that that whole day we landed up spending together. You told me that, because I was being very quiet in the car, which is, again, very unusual. You were like, you don't have to feel bad. It's not that I'm speaking to you like your father. I'm speaking to you like your boss. And I realized that those are those tricky moments where you and I, we haven't perfected it yet, but I think we're getting better at it. I think we're learning to communicate with each other better. I think even from the first time that I used to come into your cabin and ask you your opinion and how you used to answer me, as opposed to now how you answer me is different. I think you push me to take a lot more ownership of my decisions now than you used to. Like first you used to definitely tell me, well, this is wrong and this is the right way to do it. Whereas now I think when I come and ask you, you tell me, well, I mean, you need to, like, whatever decision you take, make sure that you're willing to stand by it and follow through the whole way. So whatever it is, we'll support you, but you will need to support you, which makes me either be more confident in my decision or makes me step back and say, okay, I need to think about this a little bit more before I decide to go ahead. And that's really interesting for us because we used to have a very like amiable relationship, and it's changed. There's a lot there's more friction in our relationship now than there used to be, definitely. But the friction hasn't been all bad. I would say it's made it more fun, actually, because I feel like I have always talked to you as your child. Now I get to talk to you as, dare I say, a colleague, which is cool. So
See, when you start a career, it's like taking some steps, right? These are stepping stones to maturity, stepping stone to learning, stepping stones to advancing your career. They're all stepping stones. What is required in the course of your building up this career in the company is the sense of ownership and completion. Ownership is not from the thing that you're the boss's daughter, so
Right,
you
right.
have ownership of the company. Ownership, as in you're responsible to what you have on your desk, and therefore you own what you do. And when you show that respect to for that ownership, you will automatically ensure that you see the end of it. The end of it also doesn't mean that you're getting rid of it. End of it means that you find a solution, you find closure, you find completion to the issues on hand. So this comes with period of time. It will not come to somebody who's just joined. It will come with some experience. And having spent this time in the company, a lot of your colleagues appreciate your inputs. They speak highly about you. Your communication skills are excellent. Many clients have been speaking about them also. So what happens now is that you take further steps, and in
Yeah,
taking those further steps, you come to the area of ownership and closure, and that's something that comes now
I
with
need to
time.
work on.
You need to work on that, and of course, the factor of ownership also means that your responsibility goes up.
Yeah,
And
and I think this ownership, what you said is interesting before, because you said ownership doesn't mean just because you're part of the owning family
yeah,
in the
yeah,
company, but I also think there's a slight part of it that does come from that word, which is you feel, at least I, and I know you do definitely, and so does Kaku, is more that your sense of ownership of the decisions that you're making feel
yes,
that much higher, because you're like, no, no,
yeah.
while yeah, you have to make a decision in terms of the larger picture of what's right or wrong for a company, but you're also thinking, but this is mine. Like, I have that much more equity in this, investment in this, and that's why I care so much more about taking a call. And sometimes I think, oh, we take so long to make a decision sometimes, and then I realize it's because it's not like there's like a large trickle down effect of, okay, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, you'll sign off to the board and you'll justify a decision and move on. You are the board, you'll have to justify the decision to yourself. So there is that, like you're saying, a lot of sort of credence that you have to give to completing and owning what you're doing, because really it's your name at the end of the day. It's the bottom line. Like you always tell me, you always say this to me anytime I come in a little hot and angry. It's like the buck stops at my desk. So if I think this is the way, then because I know this is going to land up in my lap, this is how I would like to see it through.
There's
But
another issue. Sorry to interrupt you here.
no, no.
Uh, the fact when I also mention ownership is the fact that as a service oriented business, you're employing a huge workforce.
Yeah,
And our actions, our decisions greatly influence the lives of this workforce.
right.
So we need to think many times over when we look at the decisions we make. It's always better to repeat what you were thinking to do, play it in your mind a few days, because the future of one employee actually has the future of 5 people linked to him. And this is his wife, his spouse, his 2 kids, if he's got two. He's always looking after a parent or a set of parents. So there are, one person's employment is actually, it takes the welfare of 5 or 6. And that becomes the responsibility
That you
that
have.
we have to
Yeah.
exhibit, that we have to show. And we aren't just taking decisions because it's a commercially perfect thing to do. You got to have that balance between what is commercially beneficial to the company, and at the same time, it's ensuring that we take along our workers with us, because that is what it's all about at the end of the day. If we don't show that compassion, if we don't show that, the emotion to this decision, and that's why I always tell you that don't rush into many of the things that you think about. Always think it over, think it over, think it over. It doesn't work favorably all the time, but I
Yeah,
think if I were to put this on a balance, I think probably a little bit of delayed decisions have always worked favorably.
that's true. And I think that was most recently evident during COVID, and in terms of how we manage the staff and how you and Kaku took the decisions in terms of welfare first. The priority was health, safety, even when that was actually a commercially detrimental thing to do for us work-wise. I know there have been specific examples where in a normal situation we would have never said no, and you never turn down certain clients, and you always respect that relationship you have. But in the last year and a half, I've seen you put your team before yourself and clients, and it's been a great lesson for me to learn. It's been a on the job course. Like I'm in a class, I'm in a classroom. Like COVID though, like you've said this as well, you feel like you've been in a classroom for the last year. Like you're just learning new ways to communicate, new ways to problem solve, new ways to depute, to challenge, to engage, to assess. Like I'm saying all these verbs, but that's really all the ways that we have changed the way we've administrated certain tasks in the last 1 year. We've had more change in the last, I would say, 6 months than we've had in the last 2.5 years that I've been there before.
But to be honest with you, I don't think anybody in this world, so 7 billion people, anybody has had any prior experience of this crisis.
In dealing with, absolutely.
And it is so individual in nature. Yes, health, from a health perspective, definitely very individual in nature. But when you look at it from an organizational point of view, whether it's a giant like Microsoft or a multinational company or small like us, or even the guy running a restaurant or a travel agency, everybody's scale of problems has been so different that there is no uniform benchmark. There is nothing which says that this works for all. So we've had to take our own calls based on our organization. We've had to decide what is best for what we could do. I've had differences with colleagues in the company who said, this is not how it's done, this is not how it's done.
Yeah.
But we've said, at the end of the day, that's just a paper. The money is paper, but life is life. And the priorities go for that to that extent. So that has been a very good learning curve for you, I would say. You've seen the way you need to deal with people.
Absolutely. I don't think any HR course could have taught me the things that I've learned about just human resource and human capital management as the last 1.5 years have.
Right.
So if I'm looking for silver linings, definitely these are the ones that you have to sit and think like, oh, you learned a lot. Yeah, you quote unquote lost a year, but you learned a lot. So just to maybe spin off from there into a more personal segment is that you often look at your employees like a family. And you've done this since before I worked for you also. I'm aware of this. Anytime we used to come to office, everyone in and around your team and around your cabin always used to, you are, I will say, you are a very beloved boss. And I'm not just saying this because you're on the show, it's public, or I'm sucking up to you. Absolutely not. This is something that I think you already know, but you are a very beloved boss. Like people look up to you, they enjoy having your attention. They feel very close to you in terms of the accessibility that you've afforded to people from the lowest ranks to the highest is possibly more than even some of the managers afford their team. You're available to everyone, and they really do look up to you in the way that even if they disagree with your decision, I've seen my own colleagues come out of a meeting with you being like, no, I think what he said is right. And I'm like, how you went in opposing him? How have you changed your mind 180 degrees? But it's because truly the way that you communicate with them and the way that you've respected them, and it's been like yours was the respect that has been earned. I think that's definitely the case. But do you think that also is a similar way? And I know you can't really compare because it's apples and oranges, but even with Dave and I, we have always looked up to you in this, like whatever dad says, like it's right. If dad said it, it has to be right. To the point where you've actually lied to us and made up things and just made up fictional, like My dad told us that the inventor of the Nespresso machine was an Italian man named Luigi Nespress. And he told us this fabulous tale about his Italian origins. And my brother and I both believed it, and then gone on to tell people that this is the story. Like, we said that we were telling them a fun fact, like, hey, did you know? Till we realized that he lied to us. And I mean, there's so many crazy things that you've tricked us and fooled us into. um do you ever feel like a sense of, like, a really big sense of responsibility, in terms of there's so many people that look up to you, that rely on you, that depend on you, that you've sometimes shouldered more responsibility than you might have wanted to, as a young adult? Like, and so I know this is a long question running up to the question, but what I'm trying to ask you is, I see how much is on your plate. And professionally and personally, there are so many people who love your attention, your time, and your ear. Like, we want your ear, which is something that doesn't come because you're deaf and you accept that. But we want to sit and tell you something because it's a very satisfying person to talk to. Do you sometimes feel like that has become, like, that's a lot, there's a lot of people in your life that need you, that rely on you? Do you sometimes feel like it's so much responsibility?
Yeah, I do. I won't say, I won't refuse that statement. Over a period of time, see, responsibility was thrust on me, as you know, at a very young age.
Yeah, exactly. So from
But
18 you've been
yeah,
doing this.
but I don't want to get into those details because that's greatly in the past. But one must never forget history if
Hmm.
one wants to live in the future, if one wants to look forward to the future. So
Wow, dad. Wow.
that's the thing that has brought about that responsibility. And for a period of time, I have worked with a lot of our colleagues. They've grown in the company. They've come as raw hands. They came as simple typists who didn't have proper command on English. They came with uh, such poor manners, for example, right?
Hmm.
Uh, they dressed poorly. They dressed not to the occasion, as not for the parties, but even for a field operation. And I don't know what it was in me at that particular point of time that I decided it was time to tell people how to change, how to improve their life, how to improve themselves. And I still do it.
Yes, I know.
I still like to tell people of what's good for them and what they should make changes in their approach in various subjects on various matters. And it's just a question of it's come naturally, so you keep telling people, uh, but never to the extent of criticizing.
Yeah.
Never conveyed in a manner that I'm critical of that. It would always bring that person down in his own eyes. So you never allow a person to lose his self-respect, however low he may be in terms of the lifestyle or
Just
his
like,
living standards,
yes, whatever
anything,
those are. Yeah.
whatever it may be, you never allow. He has his respect to the level he is at, but you never bring that respect down. You always address them well. You address them with a warmth. Even if you have to tell them, even if you have to use a carrot and stick approach, you do it in the most nice mannered way. He must know that he got hit because he did wrong, but at the same time, he must also know that uh, he respects that somebody told him he did wrong and that he needs to change his ways. So giving, and there's an old saying, right? We all know about to err is human. And if a human being didn't err, then we're working with human beings, right? We're working with people.
Yeah.
Who else will make those mistakes? So over a period of time, it's been a journey where I've had the opportunity. I had the opportunity of learning through my travels and through meeting with a lot of people. My father always told me that you must have your friends, but you must also have friends who are older than because you learn a lot more from those people. And I couldn't just go out on the street and get friends to be older than me, right? So I made friends with people in business who were older than me, and I learned a lot from them. I saw, I observed, I thought about the actions they took. And in turn, the juniors who were working with me, the colleagues who were working with me, I helped them bring around. change their ways. And today you're seeing the changes which have come around from that point of view. So responsibility, yes, but then responsibility with delivery, that to ensure that they also came up. It's not
But
just
don't you feel like that's a lot of pressure on you? That because, and I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. Your answer is right. I'm understanding your thought process behind it, but it's because today, as a young adult, sometimes we're very uh, and I'm not saying it's innate. I'm saying the way that society is going now, we're very keen to get in, do what you have to do, and move out because there's other things in your life. Because we have had the luxury of being able to have a lot more socialization, more experience travel, more like I want to do this. On a weekend I'm going to do this. I'm going to leave work because I have a life. Like I want to, I want to work out. I want to go play a game, and not to say that you didn't do that, but because you've just been, I feel constantly since age 18, you've just been handed one responsibility, and the minute you cleared that, you took another one and then another one. Do you sometimes feel like you've done a lot more, and then you look at younger people in the generation and you feel like they, do you think that we're shirking responsibility sometimes because we're not doing the same level that you did?
so changing times, changing periods, changing approaches, changing attitudes. Uh, I was telling your brother a few weeks ago that the responsibilities I had made me lead a different kind of life.
Yeah, that's I think what I'm
Yeah,
getting at.
the responsibilities that you have, uh, not necessarily that I should make comparisons, because your time is different. My time was different. Your current way of approach to life, your current surroundings, your circumstances, your environment that you live in, and your teens that you went through. I think your society today, or the youth in today's world, has got too many options, has got a whole range of, fallback. Uh, okay, I may not put it in that way, but I can switch from doing something this year to doing something next year to doing something next. And that is something that I'm not being very comfortable with over a period of
Right.
time. I always believe that Rolling Stone gathers no moss. That saying was there earlier, is there today, will remain. Uh, you have to achieve a certain mass. That mass comes with having a direction and sticking to that direction. Today's youth has too many options, too many, okay, this didn't work for me, I'll do something else. Why did you make that work for you? Is y'all are not exploring that at all. Yes, I can understand that your repeated attempts could have led to failure. It could have led to not being satisfied enough,
Right.
not being happy enough. Yes,
Yeah.
but I believe that you all have never given beyond your 40% in anything today's youth does, and that 40% is probably good enough for the life you lead. But when you want to get to the higher strata, you want to achieve something, you want to make a name for yourself, you want to do something. There, it's you need to go way beyond this, way beyond that, and that doesn't happen with the approach that today's youth has. And I'm not again saying that you guys are wrong. I may have a
Yeah.
different way of looking at it entirely. I just believe that the times that I grew up in with my responsibilities, things were different. Today, you're better informed than we were.
Yes.
We only had, honestly speaking, when we grew up, we only had the print media in front of us. You don't just have the print media, you have so many different apps on your phone, on your computers, you have so much information available to you. We didn't have that. So we had to work for what we wanted to learn.
Yeah.
We had to work to gather that mass which I'm talking to you about. You all don't want that mass. You all don't want that because you all just believe that I want to be light. I don't want things on my shoulders. And again, like I said, this is not something that is wrong. It is the current environment. Between when I grew up and now, the world has added probably 2.5, 3 billion people. And
Jesus.
that's the kind of population growth that this world has taken. Now, when you look at that much youth that has come in, one has to understand that, not that I'm saying that we are people fading away, No.
No, of course not.
One has to understand that what you all go through, whereas we go through, were two different times. But for sure, I think you all can do much more. You all can do much more in carrying some more load to bring more character in your work, to bring more strength, to bring more positivity, which I find today's youth is lacking. And I'm seeing it also, Ayushi, from the fact that the kind of people we are interviewing over a period of time. You've been on
Yeah,
so many interviews, and you see these CVs coming up, and say within a 5-year period, this guy has moved 7 companies and 6, 7 companies. And what have you gained? What have you gained? It takes the fact that it takes an employee and an employer such a long time to understand each other. How could you
absolutely.
have just moved so fast? How could you move so fast? But then, like, cost of repeating myself, that's the changing environment. And one has to live with it.
And on this topic of us doing more and you wanting us to do more, let's take a small break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that ad. I don't know which one it was, but if it was my voice, please buy the product I am plugging. So we took a break. My dad wanted water. I ran across the house and brought him a nice glass of water. So I did more. You asked me to do more, so I did more for you. But anyway, jokes aside, I don't necessarily disagree with the things that you've said. I think this is quite in line actually with some of the topics that Tash and I have discussed previously on the show. And I'll give you some context to that, is because we've actually grown up with very taskmaster fathers, like who have always asked more of us. Like, you did well, but you could do more. And so we've always felt sometimes a little bit inadequate because uh, you would have heard Vip's story, so I don't want to get into that. But and then she the sort of trials and difficulties that you went through when you were 18, and how much that you sacrificed to make sure that everyone was taken care of, and etc., etc. So we've always felt that thing of our mothers and fathers did so much to make sure that we had this life, that sometimes, do you think we take it a little for granted and that we don't necessarily see the need to do the same amount that they do? And then we try to tell ourselves that maybe the justification here is that the previous generation, whichever that is, whether that's you or whether that's me to my progeny, is the role or maybe the duty or the job of that generation is to work harder, so the next has to work a little bit less. That I worked so that you don't have to think about this lifestyle at all. And so I would have to work so much harder to make sure that this lifestyle is not only maintained, but that my kid does more. Because what you have provided for us is even more than what, say, Dada would have provided for, even though you had a very luxe childhood. You've done more for us than maybe he did for you. Also, he had 7 kids. So that's totally different. But you just keep adding a little more to the next generation. That's kind of the aim. I think sometimes, though, we both get scared that we might not ever be able to do that we might not match up, because we are very used to this new idea of life, or not new, but what we know to be reality is that, Dad, like the stakes are never so high. Like, I feel like for you, sometimes the stakes were so high that you had to make it work no matter what. You weren't allowed, you couldn't fail because you didn't have an option to fail. Now that's also negative, and I feel bad because I feel like that's so unfair that you never had the chance to stop and say, it's okay that I made a mistake. I'll figure it out and I'll try something else. We have grown up believing that it's actually very okay to not get it right. It's okay to fail. You learn, you try something new, and you move on. We try not to get so attached to whether it's work, whether it's people also, and we move past. Do you feel like that's something that you're a little bit jealous of, that we have that option, or do you honestly feel like that's just not a lifestyle for you at all?
So if you go back to what I said earlier about history, right? So the changing times for my parents and me was also existed, right? Because they walked
Exactly. Yeah.
they walked 6 kilometers at one way to school. There weren't buses in those villages. They walked, and they walked 6 kilometers back. My mom did 8 kilometers one way, 8 kilometers back. On the way back, they used to hop into some kind of horse carriage, which was passing by at a particular point of time. So they had their struggles too, as much if my age, I had my struggles.
Right.
But they struggled and they built themselves up. They built themselves up as tough people to handle tough times because tough times will always come. The harder days outnumber the happier days.
That's so depressing to
No,
hear.
but it's true. It's not happened. It's not different in their lives. Not different in mine. And going forward, believe me, it's not going to be different in your life because happiness is a measure, and the toughness is also a measure. How much toughness or the hardships you overcome in your life, that much your happier days are going to be. So if you shirk away from taking certain hardcore actions, you shirk away from not responsible, just a basic, strong, solid approach to what you're doing, and you believe that there is an easier path always. Yes, there is always an easier path exists, and you always have the option of taking the easier paths. But then there is no learning curve. You will never learn. Good quality of steel is not made if the heat is not applied to it. So, what is going to happen in your life if you were to proceed in this way, or like I'm saying, not that you have,
I
but
was
if
about to
you,
say.
no, sorry, I didn't mean it that way. What I mean to say is, it the level of responsibility, the level of pressures that we had greatly differ. Y'all don't have it.
Yeah,
Since
that's what
y'all
I'm
don't
trying to
have it,
say. Yeah.
since y'all don't have it, you have good time at your hand to do something good in your life, to develop something solid. And that is where I'm seeing youth, not again, it's not the benchmark across. A lot of people are doing so well. A lot of people are really applying themselves,
Yeah.
going places, they're achieving it. You have such young people today at such prominent positions in society, in prominent positions in global finance, in banking, in trade, in uplifting people. The young blood is there. There are so many people doing a lot of social service and being recognized. But in the mass of the youth that is there today, I'm finding that finding an easier alternative is prioritized. And the general concept being that if there is an easier way out, why should I approach it differently? Nobody said you should approach it differently. But you also need to give it a try that is there another way. I am seeing that another way is not being explored well. The other way, which could be the learning way, the experiencing something,
Right.
is not going out well. It's like you could go to a holiday in a first class play in a first class seat, land picked up, chauffeur driven, and in a hotel, return is the same. You could go the other way, go in an economy class ticket, talk to the people next to you. Of course, today's COVID doesn't allow you to do that, but experiencing, talking to somebody, there is an interaction there. You get to learn from them. Getting down, passing immigration, hopping a train, hopping a bus, exploring that challenge, taking that on. You could afford to stay in a five-star, but if you lived in something a little lower in grade, you experience that. Those are the things that we were probably forced to experience, and we enjoyed it. So today, when I go and live or I travel that way, I enjoy that. But if you got it at a young age, it came so easily to you. What are you going to enjoy then? It's going to be so routine for you.
No, I know.
You'll never aspire to enjoy something better.
This is
So
definitely something that you and mom made sure, though, that we not, that sounds so horrible to say that you put us through hardship. Absolutely not. But you made sure that we appreciated any experience that was afforded to us, like whatever that interaction. And I think that is, and I'll speak for myself, not so much Dave, is that's what has made me such a chatty, sociable person who is able to be okay in most situations. Like I think that's a strength that I have, that I'm pretty much okay in any room that you put me in. I'm not scared. And that's because I think you've always encouraged us to look at the humor, the humanity, the story around you, and to constantly look for engagement, to look for
that's
information,
right.
to look
That's
for
right.
that experience, to say that I'm sitting here and you're sitting next to a person. And this is something that you and I always do, is the minute we get off a flight, and I'm so glad you chose this flight example because it's so classic to us, is that we come up and be like, Dad, you won't believe who I sat next to. Oh my God.
Yeah, you have a story.
And it's the best, because how else would you have ever met that person and known their crazy life?
Absolutely.
Um, but that's something about you, though, that you're able to again make friends with just anybody and everybody. Uh, Much to sometimes mom and I and Dave's like amusement of like, why is dad talking to this person? Why has this conversation taken so long? And you will come back and you'll be like, guys, you never believe who I just met. You know what he runs? He is in charge of XYZ and he does this. And I mean, what a guy. And you're like, wow, I did not consider that that person could have that. I judged someone entirely based on what they looked like and where they were sitting. And you always put yourself last. You're like, oh, no, I'm going to put this person and their story first and see what comes from it. And that's so exciting. Um, but you're right that a lot of us have gotten so many experiences so easy that they're no longer, almost, I don't want to say it in a blanket way, but you're right, some things are no longer exciting.
Yeah.
And it's almost upsetting because you're like, this is something that you should have worked for, like, and enjoyed in your 30s and 40s and 50s, but you've been enjoying it since you were 20 years 15 to 20 years old. So it's kind of now like, whatever. Yeah, it happens, it's cool.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So you lose out that aspect of it if you don't, if you're not there with people. And that is the whole thing in this world, is knowing your people. You need to know, because diversity of it's fantastic. It's just a different aspect to life. India itself,
Yeah.
I've had the opportunity to travel this country extensively because of my work. I have seen people in such depth, and I tell you, I've enjoyed it. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Even the guy in the third class, those in my days, I used to be third class in trains. I've had to commute on that, but I've enjoyed some people's company, and and many times it's been so much humor. I give you a quick example. I had gone to do darshan in Tirupati, and I had to shave my head. I was all of 18 years old. And
What?
I,
When?
yeah, and
I don't know this.
well, it's okay, good for you, the listeners and the viewers. And I went all alone to Chennai, and I walked into the Chennai Central Station, took a ticket, and I went to Tirupati. And sitting in the train, I made friends with people who were all going up to do darshan. And there's a train in Tirumala Express, goes in the morning, comes back in the evening. And everybody's got hair on them, right? When you go to the temple. When you come back,
I was
seven
bald.
out of 10 are bald. But when I went, I enjoyed the company of these people. And just out of pure friendship and discussion, what we did and all, they helped me complete my ceremony. They helped me do the route which you need to take to get that hair removed. And then the hair has to be offered to the Lord. You have to buy a few things which you offer the Lord, and in that you put a few hair strands. They help me do everything, and this is just out of the blue. I didn't know these people. We
I didn't
came
even
back
know this.
together. Yeah, we came back together. They invited me for dinner the next day to their house. It's a different thing. I haven't kept in touch with them, and I feel very bad about it. But there has been occasions like this where just ordinary, simple people have helped you complete what you set out to do. And I can tell you, if I was sitting in the first class of that train, I would not have made any friends. I would not have had that assistance. I would be loitering around Tirupati trying to find my way for a few hours because it's a very crowded place.
Yeah.
And that is an experience that came because I traveled that way. Now, I'm not telling you people to travel that way just to get it. I'm saying if you get that chance, if you ever land up being there, be happy about it and enjoy that journey,
Yeah.
which is what I see today's youth not enjoying that aspect. Everybody's in a rush. That's the thing which you don't want. Their life, yeah. It's 80, 90 years to live, yeah. I mean, just take it well, enjoy it. That's what's the important aspect.
So that, first of all, I genuinely did not know that story, but it is, I will vouch that it is 100% believable because this is such a you story. I know for a fact that you must have done exactly this and spent the entire day with them.
Ah,
And it's so funny because you're married to a person who would literally never want to do something like that.
I
And
mean, that's the difference. Then again, I've enjoyed that too
yes,
because I've made fun of those incidences also, which I still do.
and you get a
And
lot of, you bring a lot of humor to your marriage because you get yourself into these situations, and you find joy, and mom is just like, why, Siddharth, why would you do this? um but and that's lovely, and I really actually enjoy that about you guys, that even though you're so different, you've made it work very well. uh Not to say any marriage is perfect or anything like that, because that's disingenuous, it's inaccurate, but I think you've really tried to see each other as people, and that's very admirable, I think. But I want to actually go back to a topic that's very relevant to you and I know that I told you we won't talk about politics, but the fact that you talked about India, you and I love this country a lot, and you know this, and I know this about you. We get riled up, we get passionate, we get aggressive at home when we talk about politics, and we always think that, oh, it's because the other person is just, you just can't see what you're saying, you're just ridiculous. But actually, if you go down to it, oftentimes I calm myself down by saying it's truly because we both really, really love this country, that we care so much about every little thing that happens, because it feels personal, because you feel so connected to the land. And I really think that's because of the work that we do, and that the work that we get to meet so many different kinds of people. We get to be from like the hinterlands where there's like, in farms and mills and agricultural services, to like the ports where you're working, like there's 24 hours, there's stuff going on, vessels are loading, like you're working with bankers and fancy conferences, and then you're also dealing with people in a in the middle of a mill, or at a factory where they're laying city gas pipelines, in the sense that our work has taken us. And that's something that I've spoken on the show also, is that that's my favorite thing about my job, is the people I get to meet. Hands down, it is the people I get to interact and work with. I just love it because the characters that come to me, it's like, oh,
well,
you exist.
yeah,
You as a person exist.
true.
How? And this person is thriving, and you're like, wow, it's just amazing. Um, we, not to get into like the politics of it that way, I just mean a lot of the way that you've approached people in terms of listening to them, hearing them out, I have to say has made me a kinder, more accepting person. Because anytime, of course, this, we disagree on this all the time, that the current government is doing this and that. And you always say it's like, intention and execution are two very different things. And what a government might have in mind and how it works out, and
Excuse me.
what effed up things happen along the way. Like, I don't want to get into that, but it's like your ability what you've taught me has really made me, I think, a kinder person to my fellow Indians. Not to sound like very cliche or kind of overly emotional about it, but it's like, oh, sorry. We have these conversations about how the youth is very like completely liberal, very left and all of that stuff. And you have this, you love to remind me that everyone's a socialist till you get your paycheck and then you're suddenly a capitalist. It's your favorite phrase to remind me of anytime I complain. But the way that you've taught me to look at people as more than just their political opinions or their political knowledge or their lack of political engagement. Because I get so mad. I'm like, why don't people care about this? And why don't people give a shit about this? And this should be like, why isn't this front page news? Why isn't this like the first thing that we talk about every single day? And I just want listeners to know, and maybe you can tell us, is that you've always prioritized and you've always made me think that a person's responsibility first will be to his self and family. And then it'll be to the little community around him, then maybe to his religious community, maybe to his faith, maybe to his society, building society. I've got you wrong, but I don't think I have. Is that as long as you are doing right by those circles around you, the politics of it doesn't matter. Right? Because isn't that kind of what you've always been trying to tell us? Is that it doesn't really matter who or what you voted for, because what defines you and your needs and your direction as a person is how you interact with those circles around you, like your immediate one, then the next one, then the little one out, the little one. And so as long as you do right by all of those, you have faith in this country. And I often lose faith in people and the country, in society, and sometimes religion and all these things. But somehow you've never lost your faith in people or this country. And how do you retain that? Because every day I wake up angry to the news, and not just now COVID wise, just in general world over. But you've somehow had this unshakable faith, and not in like one person or a political party, but in just people.
So, actually, this tier structure you mentioned is one side of it, right? Immediate family, the society, the neighborhood, etc., etc. That's the way you move your day, right? You see your
Yeah.
family first, you exit your house, you see the people around you, you move out, you see the neighborhood around you, you move further out, you see the city in front of you. And even if you leave the city, you see the country in front of you. Each is a step in its own. And the country as diverse as this doesn't exist in the world.
Yeah.
We are 28 states. The basic food that we eat doesn't match with our neighboring state. The only thing that keeps us commonly bound is purely the common gods that there is a majority that believes in, and then the minority communities have their gods they believe. But at the end of the day, everybody is influenced exactly in that same tier system that I explained. Whether it's a Hindu, it's a Muslim, it's a Parsi, Sikh, Buddhist, whoever it is. His day-to-day living is dependent on that. Now when you look at the country per se in its entirety as a whole, it's not easy to run it. It's not like the United States of America, where it's completely Christianity and a very, very minuscule population is others. It's not like the European Union, different countries, everything, but bound by common religion. It's not like China, or it's not like Japan, very homogeneous societies. What are we? We are a very, very unique country. And to govern a unique country with the kind of democracy that we enjoy is not an easy task at all. whoever runs this country, whether it's the mayor from the city point of view, whether the municipal commissioner from his municipality, a state chief minister, the prime minister, or for that matter, lieutenant general in a union territory, whatever it is, his governance is bound to be good and bad. It's going to be two ends of a spectrum. It's never going to make you happy because his job is so damn subjective. What he does is subjective. What his actions, his belief, his talk, his speech, he says a wrong word somewhere. It may make, he says something somewhere. It could be wrong for 50 people. It could be right for 100 people. How do you take this forward in a day? If you take everything that this country is wrong about, it's going to hurt you. And you're never going to be able to have a good day.
Yeah, that explains why I have less.
No.
My mornings are always angry when I read the paper, which is why I've stopped reading it.
Yeah, but there is so much good also in this country. I think in this country there is much more good than the little bad. If you look at the people itself, they're fantastic. Do you know how much humor we have in us? It's not funny. You go and live in many countries in the world, the people don't even smile. They don't have a smile on their faces. Here, whatever the chap is going to, whatever that urchin, the beggar is going through, he comes knocking on your window, he's got a smile. There is a smile, there is laughter, there is joy in whatever little it. So what I'm saying is that when you have people in this country, there is a certain amount of contentment at each strata of society. And that has come about because of a level of acceptance. And that level of acceptance is a level of satisfaction also to his bigger means or his big means. What I'm trying to say here is that as you relate moving out of the house in that same tier system,
Yeah.
if you start understanding the problems in that tier system, you'll appreciate what is good and how your life is and how it's leading. And then you have to not always aspire to the countries like, say, Singapore. It's a tiny nation. It has one singular airport. Every flight of that country is an international flight. So its airport is going to be the best in the world. You have 500 airports in this country, 50 international airports. Each one can't become a Singapore International Airport. But we can try, and that try we are doing. It's going to take time. It's going to be a slow process to convince a gigantic population of like India to manage it, to police it, to keep it under control, no. And the democracy attached to it. My God, you've had elections in this country where people have spoken so badly about their leaders. But after the elections are done, it's all hunky dory. Yeah? We'll talk again. Yeah, we are fine. We're working again. Government is back in shape. It's functioning. It's going ahead. So why will we always think bad? I mean, that's the thing which I don't understand. Who wants to be in Mr. Narendra Modi's position? Who wants to be in Mr. Uddhav Thackeray's position? Believe me, 99.99% of this population doesn't want to take that chair. Doesn't want to sit in it. So that job is subjective. So we'll make comments about it. We'll think negative about it. But get down there to govern it. I don't think it's a task that's meant for. And there are so few of them. You put all the top people in the government together, there in all the legislatures and all the MLAs and the councillors and the members of parliament. Everyone you put together, I think collectively in India, they will form 15, 20,000. They are governing 1.4 billion. Now, can you imagine how small that is compared to the number of people? Now, how many opinions you have on the actions only so many few take? Just manage that thought process and you'll realize that it's not worth stressing your day out. It's worth looking, it's worth looking and smelling the roses against trying to, meander your way through a maze of issues around you. No, that doesn't work. That's the way I see it. And I would want youth, I would want listeners, I would want your people to think in a very similar manner. Just change. I mean, you just can't have certain fixed thoughts about it. It's a great country, a land of rivers. The only part in the world that's called a subcontinent. You have an ocean named after you. Which other country has an ocean named after? Which other landmass is called a subcontinent? Nobody. Nobody.
Oh, now you're showing up about the size of the country. That is irrelevant.
Size, not size. I'm just saying we are unique.
Yeah, of course. I
That
agree.
is the fun of this nation. It is the
I
most
agree.
unique nation to be born and to live in. I don't again want to express that everybody is happy. We've got 400 million people, 300 million people below the poverty line. They are suffering, no doubt. It's going to take time to bring them up. Yeah? We've not had the best of governments in the last 71 years since independence. Attempts have to be made continuously. I mean, this Garibi Hatao slogan is going on since I was 5 years old. It's still around. So it's not going to be an easy challenge, for sure. And since I was 5 years old, this nation has added about 600 million people.
That makes me feel sick.
Yeah, that's
like,
it. That's it.
Like that's too many people.
That's too many people.
But, well, this has been lovely. This has been really nice. And I know that we didn't really get to talk about like Father's Day or what that means to you. Or I guess I wanted to ask you what you feel about. I think I can ask you, what's your favorite thing about being a father? Oh, not favorite. You can give me top 3. That's okay. Just what's the thing that you love most about being a dad?
Well, I loved them as babies. I enjoyed them thoroughly. Then I got to be mischievous with your kids all your life, even till do it.
Yes.
I like an audience for my jokes, which many of times you'll rate as cheap or sick. But yes, your presence has always been there. And being a father has humbled me a lot. Not that I was a wild guy, but it was something that I enjoyed doing. I enjoyed getting up, taking care of you guys, getting your breakfast organized, putting it to that school bus. It felt a sense of respect, felt a lot of fun. It added, what should I say, a flavor in my day. I look forward to coming back to being with you all, to being with mom. So, when you look at a heart, and then you give your heart to your wife first. So basically, you love yourself, and then you bring somebody else, and then you love that person. And then that heart keeps breaking into more pieces. Why? Not because you've broken people's heart, it's because more souls have entered it. So now a portion of your heart is for this, a portion of your heart is for that soul. I would only say that it's just been tremendous joy having children, being a father. I'd love to do it many times over, to be honest with you. I would have had more of y'all had my dear one agreed, but she was done with you two and said, that's it. So that was it. And I've grown up in a family that was big, right? So,
yeah, exactly.
We had huge fun at everything. And then we had parents who were as much part of our life on a day-to-day basis. So it brought about that. And you're seeing it in your cousins. They all have their family. They all are having children now. And they are growing their families and they're enjoying it. So.
That's sweet. I really do think that you've added just an insane amount of laughter to our lives. I don't remember. I mean, this is very emotional for me, but I don't think if I look back and I think of memories of my dad, like this Father's Day, I was, it crossed my mind. I was like, oh, it's Father's Day. And I was just looking back thinking, oh, stories about dad, thoughts about dad. And each one of them just made me laugh because I was like, he's a nutcase. Like the things that you have done to entertain us, the things that you've done to keep us on our toes, to keep us guessing. But also, like, you were the one who woke us up every single day when we went to school. You were the one who, you were so present, even though you traveled and worked so much. And I think you really made the effort to be there when you could, because you knew that other times were like you were committed to doing your job. And mom's not a morning person. She used to stay up with us at night for projects. that's definitely her forte. But you made sure that we got on that bus with a smile on our face. And even though we might have been grumpy or upset or stressed or irritated with you, whatever it was, when we got on the bus and you would wait till we sat down and you would wait till you saw us at the window. And I've always felt very safe knowing that, like, I could 100% count that when I got on the bus and I sat down, you'd still be waiting to see which window my head would come up against. And I felt very safe my whole childhood, and I really appreciate you for that. And I appreciate you for a lot of things, Dad. You've my love of people, my love of talking, my love of storytelling, that's all from you. That's my ability to look at a situation and say, it's, you should give the person the benefit of the doubt.
Yes, always, always.
That is you. I've been taken advantage of a fair few times. So have you. But I don't know. I still fundamentally believe that people are good, and they will be kind if you are kind to them.
Simple
And I
story
think
of life.
that's something that you've taught me. So I want to say thank you and happy Father's Day.
Love you, kiddo. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Love you, Dad. If you want to listen to this episode or other amazing ones, you can find them all on the IVM Podcast website. They are ivmpodcast.com and IVM Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everything. If you want to talk to me personally, you can find me at Ayushi A9 on Instagram and at Just Ayushi on Twitter. You could also write to Rytasha and I at aglastationadulthood@gmail.com. We love getting your emails. We love hearing how you feel about the show. Let us know what you think and let us know what you want to hear from us, and we'd be happy to talk about it. Have a great week, everyone, and we will be back next week together. Thank you for listening. It has been a pleasure. Thank you, Dad.
Lovely. Long live Agla Station Adulthood.
Oh, thanks, Dad. Thanks. Okay, you can stop now. I'll come and save it. So